Yeah, in the previous video, I promised that I'm going to talk to us about what exactly Israel is doing in Iran. You know, it's the United States of America and Israel that went into Iran to do battle with Iran. And what Israel is doing in Iran is quite different from America, from what America is bringing to the table in Iran. And for Israel, it's about the Greater Israel Project. Now, what is the Greater Israel Project? It has been the thesis, biblical, evangelical, prophetic, political, call it whatever justification you may want to give it. But the founding fathers of Israel deliberately did not define the borders of Israel. You know, when you talk of sovereignty, when you talk of the territory that countries essentially, maintain sovereignty over, one of the things about sovereignty is that the dimensions, the borders of the country, we speak of, should be defined. You know, it starts from here, it ends here, it passes through this place. Essentially, that is why we have maps. That is why, you can tell a Nigerian map from an African map, from a Ghanaian map, from an American map, and all that. But Israel is particularly special, if you want to use that word, in the fact that it deliberately did not define its borders. Why did it not define its borders? Because because the current borders of Israel are not the aspirational borders of Israel, the goal of Israel, where Israel is going to, where the wish is not the current status quo when it comes to the territory of Israel. And where they wish, where they are going to, is what they call the Greater Israel Project. The problem is this: Israel is a settler colonial state. Israel is a country that was founded on the ruins of another country, what used to be, historical Ottoman Palestine. As a result of that, Israel ceded itself in Palestinian territory. The story is for another day, not today, and then started to expand more and more at the expense of historical Palestine. However, historical Palestine itself was small, so Israel started to encroach into the territory of other neighboring countries. And the goal of Israel, the eventual goal of Israel, is to actually take in territory from several other countries around it, including Lebanon, including historical Palestine, like I said, including historical, Syria, some part of Jordan, some part of Egypt, even some part of Saudi Arabia. Now, that is the Greater Israel goal. That is the aspirational territorial encroachment that Israel intends to do. However, there is one country that stands, in the way of Israel achieving its Greater Israel dream, at least in the Middle East of today, and that country is Iran. You see, every other power, so to say, in the Middle East currently is absolutely no power when it comes to Israel. Because how do you project power? The way you project power, for example, number one, is a relatively independent and sanctions-proof economy. None of the countries of the Middle East boast of such an economy, at least compared to Israel, because Israel continues to have the unalloyed support and the unalloyed economic protection of the United States of America. So there is no country, in the Middle East that can actually, should I use the word, compete or essentially subdue Israel economically. Another way, that Israel or any other country, whichever country it is, dominates the country around it, is via military gear. In fact, there is a concept that is called strategic advantage when it comes to Israel. And what does that concept say? That concept says that when America wants to arm any other country in the Middle East, it is going to always consider Israel's security interests before it arms that other country. And how does it consider Israel's security interests? It is either it does not send specific weapon systems that Israel has to those countries at all, so that Israel will continue to maintain a substantial security edge over every other country of the Middle East, or it sends the same weapon systems Israel has, but a subdued, a reduced, and essentially subliminal version of that of that weapon system, such that at all times all the weapons Israel has which will continue to be superior to all the weapons every other country in the Middle East has. That way, it is not even possible for those countries, especially in these times, in recent times, to even mount any serious military pressure against Israel. And what caps it all, in terms of Israel being able to project its greater Israel dream, is nuclear deterrence. You see, in the entire Middle East, Israel is the only country that has successfully built its nuclear weapons. And currently, Israel will continue to, the usual balance is that they do not confirm or deny, but the rest of the world knows that Israel is a nuclear power, and according to scholars, it has between 200, 300, maximum 400 nuclear bombs. But when every other country around Israel in the Middle East has absolutely no working nuclear bomb, at least to the knowledge of the world, then Israel continues to maintain that superiority. So essentially, every other country in the Middle East is already under the beck and call of Israel at this material time, except Iran. Iran is the only country that is actually challenging the status quo when it comes to Israel's dominance in the region and when it comes to Israel's greater Israeli goal. And because of that, as much as possible, Israel wants to solve the Iranian problem. You see, when Israel describes Iran as the head of the snake, the head of the serpent. And when Israel refers to the snake, to the serpent, Israel is talking about talking about the famed axis of resistance. And like I defined in my previous videos, Iran sits at the top of the axis of resistance. It is the most armed member of the axis of resistance, and it is the only fully state member of the axis of resistance. All other members of the axis of resistance are non-state entities, and because of that, Iran is also particularly, has some particular advantages that also makes it a viable fighting force, a viable military entity, a viable economic entity, and even a viable geographical and even populational entity to be able to challenge Israel's dominance in the Middle East, and challenge Israel's goal as to the greater Israel project. And that is why Israel thinks that it should fight the battle of its life to ensure that if it is able to call in the United States of America to join it and do a joint battle of Iran, just in case a miracle happens, they are able to dislodge Iran, splinter Iran, or at least snatch the sovereignty, the leadership, and the regime of Iran, and put in people who are friendly to Israel and the United States of America. Israel can go on, to do whatever it wants with its greater Israel projects, while America can go on to solve its solve its petrodollar national debt problem, deter the movement of particularly important crude black gold to its major geopolitical adversary in the guise of China, and eventually project power over the entire Middle East, and from there possibly as much of the world as possible. So from this video and the previous video, I've been able to explain to you what exactly America is doing in the Middle East, and what exactly is doing fighting Iran, and what exactly Israel is doing fighting Iran, so that as this war progresses, we will be able to benchmark and see whether each of these two countries are actually achieving their goals or not, especially because we expect President Trump on Tuesday to make good his promise as to attack all of Iran's power plants and bridges if Iran does not go on to open the Strait of Hormuz unconditionally. I hope you've been able to learn from this video. Again, please do like, do share, do comment, do broadcast, do toggle the notification button so that you can always have access to our interesting analysis, and ask your questions. I'll gladly answer them. Thank you very much. See you in the next video.